Hello, everyone. This is Amy Brown. I'm the Director of Events and Education for Trade Press Media Group and Facilities Net. Thank you for joining us for today's webcast, Guide to Ensuring Fire and Life Safety Systems Keep People Safe. Our presenters today are Jeff Wyatt and Kevin Fleming. Jeff Wyatt is the CEO of Certasite and has overseen the addition of 18 businesses to the Certasite family since 2018. A United States Navy veteran, Jeff has spent more than 25 years with one of the Midwest's largest privately owned fire and security companies. Jeff developed his passion for fire protection and life safety industry as he rose through the ranks from installation technician to president and now CEO. Kevin Fleming is the district manager for Edwards Safety and has 36 years of experience in the fire and life safety industry. In 1986, after serving in the United States Marine Corps, Kevin began his career in the electronic fire and life safety field with Edwards EST distributor. Throughout his career, he has served as an installer, service technician, estimator, system application engineer, project manager, salesman, sales manager, regional manager, and vice president. A few pieces of information about today's event. Today's learning objectives include learning about the risk of not having a dependable fire life safety solution, examine how fire protection industry is changing, review the necessary testing and alarm cadence, and understanding any new codes or ordinance with fire and life safety systems. Before we get started with today's event, I'd like to cover just a few details. We do encourage audience questions throughout this webcast, and in fact, this format, both Kevin and Jeff will have some prepared remarks for the first half, and then the second half is an extended Q&A where you get to ask your questions directly. So feel free to submit those questions. Please navigate to the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and type in your questions. We will answer as many as time permits. At the conclusion of today's webcast, you'll receive a PDF copy of the slides used in today's presentation. You'll also receive a link to a brief online assessment, and upon successfully completing that assessment, you'll receive your CEU certificate. Today's webcast will also be archived at facilitiesnet.com/webcasts. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Amy. It is certainly great to be with folks today, and certainly working alongside Kevin for this presentation. I am the CEO of Certasite, a relatively new fire life safety company that started in June of 2018, and we've been awful busy ever since. After my many years serving with a course in fire and security as their president, I've got to get this to work down here. There we go. There's a little bit of a delay on the PowerPoint, so I apologize for that. It's great to be working with Kevin today and speaking to you. One of the things I wanted to start with as a fire life safety company that's relatively new, and after many years in the industry, I had an opportunity to start a business and focus on some areas that I thought this industry could use some additional areas of focus. One of those being dependable. While many fire life safety companies are dependable, our company had a focus of making sure that we had a well-rounded training academy and platform that would ensure that our technicians would be ready and able to take care of our customers and do so in a way that our services are being done in the month they're actually due. Our industry has faced a heck of a challenge, and many people across the country have seen this challenge in their space as well, with a lack of technicians. The labor pool has certainly been a challenge. Certasite has hired 4 full-time talent acquisition specialists to make sure that we stay ahead of our labor needs, and feel that we now today have been able to put ourselves in a position to take care of our customers when they're actually due, and not be late, if you will, in some of our inspections. Certainly a challenge our industry faces. Being simplified is another really high-level item. Technology allows us to be able to do a lot of great things. And this is an area that for many of you who might work with a fire protection provider, technology is not always a common item in the fire life safety field. A number of companies are in an old school format, and so they do have more of a paper-based application, whereas companies like mine and the focus we've had has been all about technology and making this an easier process to work with our company, Certasite. Our goal here simply is that we really want you to be able to focus on your core business while we take care of your fire life safety solutions. As you can see, Certasite in just a little over 4 years has grown significantly. I'm very proud to have a strong investor behind our organization to allow us to expand all across the Midwest. Currently, we have 18 locations, so we are headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana, but continue to grow our business. In fact, I'm in Cleveland, Ohio today, where we made a recent acquisition of a business that is really going to add to our capabilities and to our reach as a fire life safety company. As an organization focused on fire life safety, these are the areas that we currently focus on. Something as simple as a fire extinguisher, but still a very important item that needs to be taken care of, to fire alarm systems, suppression systems, sprinklers, and such. As you can see, also, we have first aid and life safety in some of our markets as well. Our company is focused on designing, installing, servicing, and maintaining all of these types of fire life safety systems and products. And we're very proud to have now over 220 technicians working at the Certasite today. One of the things that we wanted to cover today was to talk about some of the most common fire code violations and maybe what you might be able to do. I'm going to spend time on a couple of these. You will have these in your handout as well. First and foremost, are inspections that are past their due date. I spoke about this just a few moments ago, that it is unfortunately a challenge in our industry today, and I think for many trades, not just the fire life safety industry. But when you have all of the appropriate fire protection and safety equipment in your facility, you know, one of the important things that should be done is that they are being inspected and maintained, you know, as they are due for that service. And the different types of equipment, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment, have different cycles or frequencies for which they should be inspected. And so making sure that the inspections are being done on time is certainly a high priority for both you and for us as a company. But when we think about it from our standpoint, we are accountable to you as our customers to make sure we're on time, and we hope that you hold your fire protection providers accountable as well. Another example of a common violation that we see, especially on the inspection side, are the exit and egress issues. First and foremost, from an exit and emergency lighting perspective, we see a lot of facilities that do not properly maintain their exit and emergency lighting. And I get it, you know, it's hanging on the wall there, and the power is still on, so there's no reason to think that it wouldn't work if needed. But unfortunately, you know, over time, batteries do fail, bulbs do go out, and so maintaining a very active presence, if you will, and maintaining your exit and emergency lighting solutions is a great decision. You can yourselves on a weekly or monthly basis test those e-lighting and hit the button to make sure that it does activate. Or you can actually have your fire life safety company do that for you on a monthly or annual basis, depending upon, you know, your available resources that you have. Another challenge with the exit egress is that there are items in front of important life safety equipment. It's very common to find things in front of a fire extinguisher, and it's interesting. They're red and they hang on the wall. How do you miss them? But it's funny how they really become invisible for a lot of people. They've been there for many years. They just don't notice them. And so stacking things in front of them or in the paths to them is a very common violation. We also see this when it comes to areas of like sprinkler systems. You'll have a valve area for the sprinkler systems or backflow devices, and sometimes again things are stacked up on top of these or in front of these. And these are real challenges because of course the time you really notice that is when there is an emergency and you can't get to the area that you need to get to. There are several other items listed here, but those were a couple that I wanted to speak on specifically as related to things that I know that we run across and that we also help our customers manage. If we think about managing your life safety systems, there are really in our mind about 5 different areas that we would want to ensure that you're aware of and that you're managing with your fire life safety provider. Inspection, testing, and maintenance, of course, is one of the most common items. This is how, again, we make sure your fire alarm, your sprinkler, your suppression systems, or your fire extinguishers, they are all working properly. Again, I'll go over the cycle or the frequency here in just a moment, but when you think about the monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annual, and maybe even a 5-year maintenance requirement for some of this equipment, these are items that should be done on time, and they should be done consistently to make sure that your equipment or your products or systems are ready to go. Two is to manage deficiencies. In many cases, we may find a deficiency with a life safety system or even a fire extinguisher. And managing that process is an important step. It's easy for those notes to be made and then not followed up on either by the customer or the fire life safety company. Again, with labor being tight in some cases, some companies are not as fast at getting back to some of their customers on some of those concerns. So managing those deficiencies becomes a high priority. I'm very proud to say that at Certasite, we have technology that really helps us do that and do it really well. And I'll share some information about that here shortly. Obviously, once you've identified a deficiency, being able to repair that or service that deficiency or that maintenance need becomes the next step. Having fire life safety equipment that does not have all of the proper services being done and or the maintenance not being completed, or if there's a repair needed for batteries and or a panel or a sprinkler system, obviously the concern becomes, will it be ready when it's needed? Next is reporting and compliance. Many people in our industry, as I mentioned, use paper. And so there has to be a paper copy that is in the file for the customer or at the fire life safety companies who can provide that to you. At Certasite, one of our main focuses has been ease of use, being simple to work with. And so we utilize a technology platform for our field service technicians so that we can not only provide this to you electronically and in a place that you can get to it at any time, but we also have a portal that allows our customers to have a good dashboard and view of their systems, inspections, and all of the related documents that go with that. Point simply being that having a reporting and compliance application with your life safety provider is an important part of this. Then finally, systems monitoring. We all can see that 24/7 fire happens at any time. Being able to have either a fire or a trouble identified 24/7 with a monitoring system is an important part of your overall life safety program. As we look through here some of the service and maintenance schedules, we start with fire alarm. I'm going to speak to this one. An annual fire alarm is typical, an annual fire alarm inspection, but there is also a 2-year sensitivity test that's required on smoke detectors. This is a common item that gets missed, unfortunately, as it doesn't happen every single year. Some of the common violations we see with fire alarm are dead batteries, failure to communicate to the central station. We even see in some cases smoke detectors are not working properly as they've not been maintained. On the fire extinguishers, we have both a monthly inspection requirement and an annual. On the monthly basis, many customers can do this themselves. It's an OSHA requirement to have those extinguishers checked at least on a monthly basis. However, your fire life safety company can also be a monthly inspection, also conduct that monthly inspection as well. But as a minimum, an annual inspection should be done by a certified company. There's also a 5-year hydro test for certain types of extinguishers, 6-year internal maintenance on some of the stored pressure units, and a 12-year hydrostatic test on other types of units. We do see often extinguishers are in the wrong location. Certain types of fire extinguishers should be in a designated area. There's a national fire protection standard that tells us exactly where those areas are, and they should be followed by your certified fire life safety company. Fire sprinklers have a weekly inspection for gauges. This is typically done by the end user, the customer, although again, can be done by your fire life safety company. Quarterly, semi-annual, and annual inspection should be done, of course, and a 5-year internal inspection for sprinklers as well. We often see painted or even in some cases, some broken heads in some applications, and these are some items that would need to be addressed, of course. And then finally, the exit emergency lighting. I mentioned there are the monthly quick check that you can just simply push the button. And then there's the actual annual maintenance, which might include a 30-minute test of your batteries in your system and to make sure that the power will indeed transfer. We often find the annual inspections are not being completed, which means when the lights go out, power goes out, you end up without the ability to have that proper backup system. I mentioned Certasite is focused on being dependable. I want to talk quickly about how important it is that the technicians that come to your facility are properly trained. And we're very, very focused on this with our Level Up program through the Certasite Academy. You can see to your left some of the examples of things that we do specifically to ensure our technicians have all of the appropriate training. And then finally, life safety being simplified couldn't be more important today. You have so many things going on in the world that we all live in today. And we've developed a portal application to give you that ease of use, that once you log in to this portal. You're able to see really every aspect of your fire life safety systems, from the inspection reports to the invoices. Maybe it's a deficiency and the status of a deficiency. You can create service calls. And probably one of the most important things about any kind of portal application like this is being able to have a dashboard that allows you to see in every way that you want. As an example, in our case, we can provide it by location, we can provide it by department, we can talk about specific service lines if you want to just look at your fire alarm or your fire sprinkler systems. We're very proud of this portal and the ease of use that it brings to our customers, but we also recognize there are many others out there. And for us, it's just making sure that you have a way to access all of your records and stay on top of where your fire life safety equipment is in their cycle and in their level of readiness. As you can see to the left, we talk about how easy it is to access the information. We hope to bring a stress-free management of your life safety systems by providing such a simple tool for people to be able to use. At Certasite, we're very focused again on being our both dependable and simplified solution. We look forward to hopefully working with you and/or being a part of future webinars where we can continue to provide some important and good information. We certainly are a lot more than fire extinguishers, and we look forward to talking to you again at some time in the future. Amy, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Jeff. Just a reminder, we'll have an extended Q&A after Kevin goes through some of his points he'd like to make. So feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type in any of your questions. But Kevin, I'll turn it over to you. Oh, Kevin, you're still muted right now.
Thank you, Amy. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Jeff's presentation highlights the need for ongoing maintenance and testing of systems, and that's all systems, to ensure they are ready when the need arises. Today, I will be reviewing the changes in smoke detection standards and the Edwards Optica solution that not only meets the new standard, but delivers real-world performance where we need it and when we need it. Before I get started, I want to provide some quick context to our company as a whole. Carrier is the latest parent company of Edwards and is a leading global provider of healthy, safe, and sustainable building and cold chain solutions with a world-class diverse workforce. We create solutions that matter for people and our planet. Maybe my advancement's not, there we go. Okay. Carrier consists of three groups: HVAC, refrigeration, and fire and security, which is where we fit in. You probably know us as one of our market brands, Edwards or Kidde. Edwards, celebrating 150 years in 2022, is the franchise brand, and Kidde serving the commercial and industrial dealer space. For over a century, we've been developing innovative products and services that have changed the way people live and work. Our $20.6 billion in 2021 revenue is driven by our more than 58,000 employees worldwide. Our 2030 ESG goals, and that's environmental, social, and governance goals, underscores commitment to the things that matter and to continuously change ourselves to think bigger and to be better. Expanding on 3 decades of environmental targets, our goals include measures to improve our planet, our people, and our communities. So let's jump into one of those goals, which includes improving our people. I'll briefly walk through some of the changes to the UL standards for commercial smoke detectors and then transition to our solution to meet the new standard. There's been some changes in detection code. Research on a range of persistent issues pertaining to smoke detection has driven industry changes requiring substantial improvements to the components comprising the typical system. A combination of minimum changes in detection through decades, increasing nuisance alarm across all building verticals, and an evolution in fire signatures due to an increase in polyurethane materials in modern buildings demanded an industry adjustment. Fires are burning at hotter temperatures, developing more rapidly, and a reduction of egress time. All this calls for new goals. These goals are simple: faster, more accurate response to real fire situations, differentiation between real fires and unwanted alarms, and increased egress time. All that, again, demanded change. At its facility outside Chicago, where smoke detection research is conducted and products can be tested for certification, UL built an 800 square foot lab to deliver controlled, consistent, and repeatable measurements in testing. The facility controls climate variables such as humidity, air pressure, and thermal equilibrium consistency. Here, 3 new tests were developed. The polyurethane foam fire, which is the flaming version, the polyurethane foam fire smoldering, and the cooking nuisance fire, which we call the hamburger test. Now, this is a 2-part test. First, the detector must not alarm from the burned hamburger components until subsequent polyurethane foam test is activated, and then it must alarm. As you can imagine, solving the cooking nuisance test paradox has been a challenge to the entire industry. This does not overshadow the importance of compliance with these tests. In 2004, NIST completed a study reflecting smoke detectors were working, but there was a reduction in the margin between available and safe egress times from the earlier 1975 Indiana Dunes investigation. The bottom line is this: due to current building and furniture material compared to those used in the 1975 Indiana Dunes investigation, egress time, now that's the time between detection of a fire and smoke consumption of the area, rendering it unsafe for egress, has reduced greatly. As previously stated, egress time today is actually 3 to 5 minutes compared to 1975. The time was about 15 to 17 minutes. Obviously, again, this dictated a need for industry adjustment. Keeping those fire test challenges in mind and coupling it with the COVID-19 pandemic, the compliance date for UL 268 edition has been extended several times. The current compliance date is set for June 30th, 2024. All system smoke detectors manufactured after that date will be required to comply with the new standards in order to be UL listed. However, industry experts such as Eric Jackboina, the associate engineer with Jensen Hughes, and Wayne Moore, vice president with Jensen Hughes and a world-renowned fire protection engineer, developed a white paper entitled "The Importance of the Early Adoption of UL 268, 7th edition." Some of the benefits of early adoption listed in this paper include unwanted alarm reduction, reducing unwanted and unwarranted dispatches of the local responding fire department, quiet system, reducing the number of callbacks for the installing contractor and the facility manager due to unwanted alarms, and peace of mind, the owner and facility manager providing less disturbance to and quicker response to actual alarms for their occupants. Keep in mind, this does not impact duct detectors since they're tested under UL 268A and are not required to meet the requirements of UL 268. Now, Paul's going to play a quick video to introduce the Edwards Optica, our solution for UL 268, 7th edition. Paul?
In today's environment, detecting and mitigating fire threats is more difficult than ever before. Whether you're a hotel operator, a building manager, or a restaurant owner, the challenge is the same: protecting people and property while avoiding nuisance alarms that don't pose a threat but do incur costs. In 2014 alone, U.S. fire departments responded to almost 2.5 million false alarms, potentially costing hundreds of millions of dollars. Building on a 146-year legacy of fire and life safety innovation, Edwards is addressing these demands and the new UL 268 requirements with the next generation offering, the Signature Optica Smoke Detector. Featuring 2 forward scatter light sources, an IR LED and a blue LED, combined with a backscatter IR LED, Optica represents a more sophisticated detection system. As particles enter the chamber, light hitting them at different angles creates detailed data about their size and composition. That data is fed into a series of algorithms and consolidated into ratios to determine if the particles are coming from a real fire or a nuisance source. Optica is designed to discriminate between burning food, steam, or fast-moving or smoldering fires and respond accordingly. Optica is part of an integrated intelligent system and retains the signature protocol, so it's backwards compatible. And because state-of-the-art microprocessors in each detector can activate the signal, they're easily retrofitted to existing Edwards systems without replacing control panels or software. Smart detection designed to recognize conditions and alarm faster with greater accuracy than ever before. The signature Optica smoke detector, setting the standard for intelligent response to today's threats.
Thank you, Paul. I'm gonna get these slides advanced here so we can get on back in the saddle, okay? So we're gonna talk about signature optical discrimination now. As you can see from this graphic, detection from a purely particle size is somewhat challenging. Discriminating smoke particles from other airborne particles aids in unwanted alarm deterrence. In optic detectors, the three optical sensors work by measuring the size, the color, the reflectivity, and density of particles, reacting only to those that pose a serious threat. While detectors that are already installed are not subject to the new standard, replacements will be. So it is important to also consider the backwards compatibility of the technology. There are significant savings in being able to replace an old detector with the latest technology without programming or control panel changes. This includes, at a minimum, mandatory upgrades to your existing circuits, mandatory panel upgrades to accept the new detectors, and possibly mandatory replacement of all devices on the circuit when only one needs to be replaced. With multiple optical sensors, Optica is listed as a multi-criteria detector without the addition of any other sensing elements, such as heat or CO. Also, meeting the new industry standards, detectors can be enhanced with multiple sensors for heat and carbon monoxide to increase overall occupant safety. Now, the Optica sensitivity range of 0.5 to 4.36% foot obscuration provides a wide range of detection while simultaneously providing nuisance alarm deterrence up to 1.5% obscuration. Shown is the new style UL268 mark for ease in identifying new detectors meeting the current standard. Let's take a quick look under the hood. Here it shows the inner workings of the Optica detector. The three LEDs, the IR forward scatter, the IR back scatter, and the blue forward scatter LEDs shows how we look, if you will, at the particles in the chamber. Models available include the additional CO thermistors and combination CO thermistor detectors. Backwards compatibility has been a design requirement for Edwards throughout the years. The Optica series represents the fourth generation of signature devices dating back to the original signature Gen 1 series, which we released in 1994. For 28 years, the signature protocol has been the standard for Edwards intelligent detector communication, and the Optica is compatible all the way back to the Gen 1 devices. That can save a facility manager a large portion of the maintenance budget when a detector replacement costs a few $100s compared to multiple thousands in device cards, panel upgrades, and system upgrades. There's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to cover. We have various case studies and white papers available at our newly enhanced website. You can reach us at www.edwardsfiresafety.com. And if you use /lifelines, you can have access to technical information on all of our products. From there, I want to say thank you. Amy, I'll give it back to you for our Q&A session.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. Just turn on my camera now because we'll have our Q&A panel. Looks like we do have a few questions that have already come in. Just a reminder, please post your questions in the Q&A chat to either Kevin or Jeff. We'll get through some. We've got plenty of time, so it's your opportunity to have two experts in the fire and life safety. First of all, before we jump into Q&A, I just want to thank you both for your military service that was in both of your bios. Thank you for your service. We appreciate it.
My honor.
You.
We have a question from Machendi. They're expecting so this is a long question, so I'm going to try to sum it up. They lean on their vendors for doing what needs to get done, especially when it comes to fulfilling the requirements of changing and detection, alarm suppression codes. They were wondering if either of you are aware of a single area or single place they could go to get updated guidance for fire and life safety requirements and codes in a specific market.
I guess I'll try to field that one, Jeff, and you can add to it, or we can work it together. A single location. So one thing to keep in mind in the fire alarm industry, when a system is installed by code, it is the minimum protection you can put in based on the local authority. So when a code, NFPA 72, and what Jeff was referring to earlier, everything he was talking about was coming straight out of 72 when he talks about fire alarm. That's the National Fire Alarm and Signaling Code. When a code is adopted, it is generally adopted by the local governing body, and that is what gives a code the strength, which is the enforcement that comes from the fire marshal. So your local authority having jurisdiction is the one that would tell you what your minimum requirements are. But from what Jeff said, and what I'd like to add is minimum is minimum. And when it comes to life safety, I encourage everyone to consider going above the minimum and doing an actual life safety assessment to see if there's a good idea. And you may not be required to have an extra fire extinguisher here, but it might be a really good idea based on the way your operation works. You may not need an extra smoke detector here, but again, it may be a good idea. So that's kind of my comments on it. Your compliance would be determined by the local code and the local authority having jurisdiction. And Jeff, you want to comment on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, three things I'd add. One, your fire life safety company that you work with should be able to quote to you specifically what is the current standard required in your particular state or jurisdiction. They can tell you that, for example, you may be operating on a 2016 standard that's been adopted by your state. There may be a 2020 or 2022 current standard that's available for use, and many fire life safety companies typically follow the most current standard in order to ensure that any updates or changes that have happened are not something that we're waiting on in the state, the legislature, if you will, to go through that process. But your fire life safety company should have, as you call in and ask them for direction on getting clarification on what the current standards are by system. Two, you certainly have NFPA.org. The National Fire Protection Association will put you in a position to really be able to look at or have a sense of any of the standards that are in place today. And this is, again, a website, nfpa.org. You will not know, again, necessarily which of those standards are adopted by your state to what level, but you will know, like, for example, on fire alarm systems that Kevin talked about, NFPA 72, you'll know what the current edition is, and you may then determine if you have that in your state. Lastly, you have your state fire marshal that you can reference. As Kevin spoke about the local authority, that would typically be the city, county, or local community fire marshal. That can be some help, but oftentimes they're not always fully aware of all these as well. There's a lot of changes that occur over time. And so the state fire marshal's office is a great place that you can reach out to and inquire about the current standards for, and I would say specific things. That way it's not overly broad in the sense of the response. It could be a pretty significant and long response if there's not some clarity.
Perfect. We've got a question from an audience. Jeff, I'll direct this one to you on just best practices on checking fire doors and cadence for checking fire doors.
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, there is a national fire protection standard that deals with fire doors, and I'll say it this way: having those, those fire doors are so important, and so having those checked at least once a year. We actually recommend twice a year to ensure that they are being tested on a frequency level that ensures that they're going to operate effectively. Again, they're such a key part of a life safety application. But at least once a year, you should have them inspected by a qualified contractor. there are people who just do fire doors. That's what they do for a living. And then there are others like ourselves that are doing fire doors in conjunction with other life safety solutions.
Perfect. Kevin, I believe this question's for you. Someone was asking about the dry pipe system that has more than 80 PSI. Does that damage the valve?
That's a sprinkler question. That would really go to Jeff.
Oh, sorry.
Or to me. Yeah. Mhm.
Well, and unfortunately, I'm the CEO of the company, and I have had many years in the field prior to moving into the ranks of an executive. But I don't know that I can answer the question other than to say this. Traditionally, all of the piping in a sprinkler system has a particular rating, and there's a gauge on the wet sprinkler system as an example that's going to tell you the typical range of that water pressure. I don't believe, in my memory, 80 psi is a concern. I believe that is probably within a normal range. I feel like it's between 80 and 125. But again, please forgive me. I will be happy to get back to you when I go to the folks that do this for us in the field as well.
No problem. Kevin, we had someone just ask for the website for Edwards Lifeline. If you could just repeat that.
Okay, sure. It's www.edwardsfiresafety.com/lifelines.
Perfect.
And that takes you direct to it. If you just go to the www.edwardsfiresafety.com, there's a button on there that'll get you to that. But the /lifelines will take you right there.
Wonderful. And then, Kevin, another
Well, I
question.
was just going to say a side note about Jeff answering the sprinkler question. I used to have a saying that I'd tell my guys in the field. I'd say, guys, the longer I sit behind this desk, the easier it is out in the field, and the less I remember about what's out in the field. So, I feel for you.
Yeah.
We can get the answer for you. That's absolutely true.
Perfect. Kevin, we had a question about can the Edwards smoke detector tell the difference between an actual fire and a fire extinguisher discharge from vandalism, like in a parking garage?
One of the things about most of my answers are going to be, it depends. Because it depends on the things that are going on around it. I would say it's quite possible. One of the things that Optica does is with the algorithms that are in it, it actually looks at what is in the chamber versus just a level of obscuration. So it is quite possible. I do not know if we have tested against a fire extinguisher discharge, but I'll make a note here. And if they can send that question to me direct, I'll check with our team and get an answer back to them.
Yeah, we'll provide you the list of the questions.
Okay.
And Jeff, it looks like Bill on our Q&A was saying sprinkler systems are rated at 150 psi working pressure and 250 psi bursting pressure. So 80 is within the normal psi for a sprinkler system. So, thank you, Bill, for confirming that. We have an attendee that's asking if either of you have experience with fire and life safety systems in environments with explosive materials other than the military.
Yes, I have. I was formerly on the national accounts team, and I was in the D&D market, which is dangerous and dirty. So from a fire alarm perspective, I have experience in the hazardous area, and if they want some follow up with that, we can help them with that.
Perfect.
Now that's just, I'm covering the fire alarm. Jeff, you got the other systems.
Yes, we actually we work with Fike, which is one of our manufacturers, on some applications like that have explosion-proof applications, and there's very specific equipment we have to use, of course, in those. So when we have that application, we work very closely with that manufacturer to ensure that we're providing the exact appropriate equipment that is going to go in that room. That's a very sensitive and very high-profile application that we want to be sure we're doing the right thing.
Great. We have another attendee question. With the proliferation of lithium-ion batteries in industrial buildings, does anything come to mind with prevention and suppression issues over standard wet or lead acid batteries?
Well, I can certainly say this. the battery world has become obviously a much bigger place for everyone in talking about the proper way to protect the equipment. So I know, for example, there are standards being updated as a result of all of the recent increase on the fire protection requirements. I certainly could say that if you have that application or you're looking to protect that application, you must make sure the person that you're working with, the fire life safety company that you're going to talk to about this, is familiar with and works on or has this as a part of their competency. And no disrespect to any fire protection company out there. There are just some folks who don't have some of that experience. We, again, work very closely with the manufacturers on each of these types of applications. So, for example, if somebody were to recommend a CO2 a system as an example, or perhaps it might be a clean agent system of some type, that may be applicable in one case, but not in another. And so my recommendation is make sure the company you work with is competent, they've got experience in this area, and then they would want to work closely with the manufacturer of the systems for that specific application, because it's certainly not one of those generic, hey, this will work anytime, anywhere. You've got to be very intentional about what you're doing.
Perfect. Kevin, you indicated that detectors manufactured after June 30th, 2024 now must comply with this new requirement. Can you clarify, does that mean all detectors in the system are required to be replaced after that date?
No, if you have an existing detector, so let's talk about two things. Let's talk about compliance and let's talk about functionality. The first side, compliance, you don't have to go and replace all of your detectors. If there was a detector that was manufactured prior to that date, it can still be sold, it can still be installed, and it's still a UL listed detector. That doesn't change. However, one thing to consider is that the newer detectors are not just a new brand with a new sticker on them. They are tested to a totally different test. So there is calls and there is recommendations for upgrading to the newer detectors system wide. However, it doesn't mean that you have to go and do it when you replace the detector after that date. It has to do with the manufacturing of that detector.
Yeah. What do you think the industry will look like in the next 5 years in terms of service and technology?
It's a great question. I would share with everybody here, this is my 33rd year in the fire life safety industry. I don't look that old, do I? I can tell you that the industry has been changing so quickly here these last 5+ years in a couple different ways. First and foremost, I'm really happy to share that the fire life safety industry is becoming more technology focused. While there are still a lot of fire protection companies that are old school on paper and not necessarily interested in moving into the world of field service technology or having an online platform or in a sense an easy button that you can use. More companies today than ever are, and I'm very excited about that. So over the next 5 years, I anticipate many additional companies will join the technology platforms, and you as our customers will benefit nicely. There is also a pretty substantial amount of acquisitions happening in our space. The consolidation of the fire life safety industry is happening in a pretty big way. As an example, my company made its 20th acquisition yesterday. Since we started 4 years ago. But there are many other companies in the marketplace that are also doing consolidation. And some people look at that in a bad way. The poor mom and pop is no longer in business. And I'm certainly, I have a small business myself outside of fire protection. So I love having a small business, and I really respect those who do this. The challenge for most mom and pops are they can't afford to do some of the things that they really need to do as the business grows and to properly take care of their customers. And technology is just one piece. There's also, of course, the idea of being able to expand their service line, certainly also being able to hire the quantity of technicians and have the right staff to be able to properly service their customers. So as the consolidation continues, the good news is these companies that are consolidating, including mine, now have more capabilities, more technology. We're able to really provide a much broader sense of service to our customers. And I think as other people do the same thing, you see a lot more larger mid-sized to larger companies that are able to do just more items, more things for them. I think the other aspect of this is when I think about 5 years from now, I think what we're going to find is more companies than ever will be doing more services, meaning there are still some fire extinguisher companies out there, for example. That's all they do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's their experience, it's what they do, and they're good at it. But I think you as our customers are demanding, I don't want to say the word one-stop shop necessarily, but so you really are looking for someone to handle more things that you trust. And I think that's the key. You've got to absolutely trust the company that can do all those services. I'm sure you want to hit one button and get a hold of somebody and have them take care of it, rather than trying to figure out who your vendor is for this or who your vendor is for that. So I think those are really good examples, I think, of what we're going to see over the next 5 years.
Can I jump in on that? I'd like to add to this. Yeah. I've been on the receiving end of that acquisition. And one thing to keep in mind, you may have been a mom and pop company, but now you're a mom and pop company with a lot more muscle. There's a lot more opportunities. You can actually offer your customer more benefits because you do have the strength of the larger corporate application, but you also still have the small mom and pop feel, because one of the things that a company wants to do when they acquire is to get those good people and to continue running that business. So I've been on the receiving end of it, and it was a very positive experience for me.
Kevin, I also wanted to make sure I mentioned this, and you can speak to it. When you think about for the consumer, what's going to change in the next 5 years, I spoke to it about how it will apply to their life safety provider. I didn't think about talking about the fire alarm systems as an example that are currently getting smarter and smarter as we go. So, for example, we're hearing of fire alarm systems that are now being able to identify troubles in a different way than the old days, where there was a trouble and a tech would come out and they would try and figure out what's wrong. We're seeing smarter fire alarm systems today than ever. So I think 5 years from now, I'm curious from your perspective, there has to be a continuation of that.
Well, you talk about that, and if you look at my background here, this is our new Edwards EST4. And in old school, you're normally communicating by a 485 communication line, and you have local short distance communication with RS-232. Our EST4 platform now runs on TCP/IP version 6. So we have the fastest download speeds, the fastest upload speeds, and we have greater opportunities to incorporate things like texting troubles, defining which ones go to which receiver, posting information in different locations, sending reports is very important. Sending reports to a maintenance person in a facility at a scheduled time, so when they get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and at 8:05 we can send them a report with every trouble or every incident that occurred over the last 24 hours. So yeah, the opportunities are, it's moving rapidly with technology today.
As a EST strategic partner out of Detroit, I agree 100%.
Outstanding.
Perfect. Kevin, you talked a little bit about the UL incorporated the 3 tests. Can you elaborate a little bit on the significance of that?
Sure. So when you're looking at these 3 tests, and I kind of covered over to a very high level. Back in 1975 were the tests that were performed to determine how a smoke detector should react, what they should respond to. And we've kind of used that as a benchmark along the way. And then in 2004, the NIST came out with their review, and they realized that the products and the materials that are in buildings now are different than the materials that were there in the 1975 test. So when they started testing with this new material, again, I kind of touched on it, things are moving a lot faster. They're burning a lot hotter. And of course, the egress time is reduced tremendously. So when you look at these 3 tests, they have the 3 parameters are the polyurethane foam fire test, which is flaming, which represents a fast moving fire. The polyurethane foam fire testing for smoldering, which means like a slow developing over time fire. And then the nuisance cooking alarm, that one is to satisfy the NFPA 72 requirement for the reduction of nuisance alarm, unwanted alarms. We've got a white paper on our website that talks about how we reduced false alarms in a dormitory at a college, and we call it the popcorn test because it was the microwave popcorn test, all these unwanted alarms. And you rarely ever hear me say the term false alarm, because a false alarm means it's not true. An unwanted alarm means that something got into that detector chamber, it was detected, and we gave an alarm, but we didn't want it to do that. So that's what we call unwanted alarms. But yeah, that's the driving force behind that. And the two things for me is being able to detect faster and to increase that egress time for the occupants, because it's been so tremendously reduced.
I will be honest, I set off a dorm alarm in my college days, and the firefighter showed up with his axe at my room, and it was just burned something in the microwave. So I can imagine these, trying to limit the nuisance of alarms. We've all been in buildings where the fire alarm system goes off and everyone just stays there, just sits down. I would imagine if we can decrease some of these nuisance alarms, when people do hear alarms in the future, they might be, more responsive. Because we've all sat there through fire alarms where we know it's either a test or false or something like that. But that's important, is to make sure people are aware of what's going on in the building and that they respond the way that it's been designed.
It's true. It's where you get the boy that cried wolf scenario, where people just don't respond. The alarm goes off, and the first thing they do is, well, there's another false alarm. I'll wait till somebody tells me to leave. Now, if that's occurring and your amount of time to egress has reduced from the max, up to 17 down to the minimum, down to 3, you just put yourself in a very serious situation.
And then, Kevin, you mentioned multi-criteria detector. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what that means?
Sure. UL has a designation for detectors, and it's classified as multi-criteria. And by its name, you can understand it means there's more than one criteria of fire elements that are detected by the detector. Usually that's covered by having a smoke detector with a thermal element to it, where it detects heat and smoke, or a smoke detector and a CO detector where it detects CO and smoke, or a combination of all three of them. Well, and there's a special designation, and it's called multi-criteria. Because of the LEDs and the Optica, and the fact that we are looking at the smoke at 3 different angles with 2 different colors, and we're looking at the parameters of it, it's classified by UL as an upgraded detector called a multi-criteria detector. So it does that without having to have the use of some other element of detection.
Perfect. Now, can you give us some tips on working with EHJs and how to kind of create a good relationship with some of those jurisdictions or the authorities?
That's a great question. Yeah, the fire authority having jurisdiction may be different in different communities. As an example, in many of the ones that we operate in, it's actually the fire department. They have a authority having jurisdiction that is the inspector. He's who's going to come out and check a system when it's ready to be put online, et cetera. In some other markets, it might be actually somebody related to the facilities management. There's got like a facilities inspector or a building inspector. Maybe it's a better way to determine it. So the first thing to do, in my mind, would be to determine who they are. And again, your fire life safety provider is probably a lot more resourceful than you might realize. Calling whomever's on the tag of your fire extinguishers, or whoever is servicing your fire alarm. Hey, who is the local authority having jurisdiction? And they're either going to be able to tell you it's the fire department, or they're going to tell you it's a building inspector. They might even know the name. We as in the fire life safety industry, we try to have educational programs like this for the fire authorities to help give them some education updated with the current, some of the things that are changing, in the standards. And so we reach out to those folks and ask for an opportunity to meet with them. Either we come to them, we go to their facility and just introduce ourselves and explain what our role is in the world of fire protection in that particular jurisdiction. We kind of validate they're the right person to work with. But the best way, the absolute best way, they are really, really good people. They really enjoy the connection or the interactions with not only those in the fire life safety business, but also those folks that have businesses or operate a business in a particular market. So I found them to be very willing and able to, if you were to call and ask if they could stop by at some point, not for an inspection necessarily, but for an opportunity to meet them and just be able to establish a relationship with them. And usually in that context, they're very helpful, very willing to share, make sure you're aware of some things that are happening. Maybe there's a new requirement in that local market that you're not aware of. We see a lot of filing requirements as an example, where the fire department themselves aren't getting the inspection reports, but it is going to a third-party compliance company that they are registered with, that they will verify your inspections have been done properly and on time. So it's nice to know if those things are required in a particular jurisdiction. But honestly, once you determine who it is, contacting them and asking for an opportunity, even if it's just on the phone, to meet them and understand what they do, where they cover, what, do they inspect annually, twice a year, and then if there are any specific things that you want to make sure they know and or they need to learn about you that you want to share, I think it's a great opportunity. But again, they are really, in general, they are some of the best folks to work with. Their intent, think about it, that's our intent too. We want your systems to be working properly. We want you to be safe. That's their intent as well. And sometimes it's not so fun when they find a violation, but our job is to keep you out of that scenario, at least on the fire protection side, and hopefully you can have those conversations with them directly.
Kevin, any additional thoughts?
I just want to reiterate exactly what he said, is that it is generally a phone call to engage the fire department. Generally a phone call, pick up the phone call, and they'll come by. A lot of times they do just a courtesy walkthrough with you. But they want to be engaged because, as Jeff said, our overall goal, our number one goal, is life safety, is to protect people's lives. So I've always found, without exception, that they have been very helpful, and they want to partner with the end user so that we can help them keep their facility safe for their occupants.
Perfect. We did have a question, and I'll let both of you kind of answer this, specific about if you work in Canada. So do you want to talk a little bit, Kevin and Jeff, about your current scope of where you do business, and just kind of outline that for the individuals?
You bet. So Certasite is headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana, and then we are in 18 markets, specifically starting in Pittsburgh. We have multiple markets in Ohio, so we're in every major market in Ohio, every major market in Michigan, including Alpena, Michigan. If you know where that is, that's impressive. It's way up there in the northeast corner of Michigan. We have an office in Milwaukee. We're also in the Quad Cities, if you know where that is as well. It's a gold star. That's Fulton, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa. So Certasite's really focused in the Midwest and growing rapidly in the Midwest. So we anticipate having about 40 offices by the end of 2024. So I've got a lot of work to do. But our objective is to have a really good shared resource platform so my technicians can really get the help of others, and we can share inventory, supplies. My experience is that you can provide one of the best levels of service to customers when you have that kind of a shared resource process. And then also all the inventory, needs that we have, being able to share those resources too. So that's Certasite. And again, we're everything fire life safety, fire extinguishers, fire alarm, fire sprinkler, backblows, fire pump, engineered suppression and restaurant suppression systems, and of course, fire extinguishers.
Sure. And Kevin, obviously, Carrier parent company is a global brand. Edwards and Kitty is a global brand as well. You've got distributors all across the country, correct?
Yes, we are a global brand, but when it comes down to it, it comes down to your local district manager. I cover what we call the Tennessee Valley, which is Middle and West Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi. That's my team. That's my area. And there's another district manager for all the different areas, regions in the U.S. So yeah, we have to have the one-on-one person relationships with our distributors and with the end users. And we're kind of like the fire marshal. We love to come in and talk to end users, help them understand what their options are with their systems, and help make it, recommendations of what they can do to help make their facility more safe.
And you've got operations in Canada as well.
Yes, yeah. North America and Canada does report to us as far as part of the North America team. And then we have others for Latin America and Europe, Asia, and all those areas.
Well, wonderful. Well, we're coming up on the 1 hour mark. It's been a great discussion with both of you, Jeff and Kevin. I'll give you a chance to give some final thoughts to our audience. Kevin, do you want to go first?
Sure. Don't get hung up on the minimum. Don't get hung up on doing just the minimum, but really consider what your facility needs to be protected and be willing to go above and beyond the minimum. And then in addition to that, one of the reasons I really enjoyed being here with Jeff is because I have for my entire career preached maintaining their systems and making sure that that system, when it is needed to operate, is going to be in a proper operating order. That's all I got. Thank you. And thank you for having us here.
Perfect.
Yep.
Jeff, any final thoughts
Yeah.
for the audience?
I sure will. And I loved your comment there, Kevin. Certasite, we really believe that, yes, we've got to be aware of and focused on compliance. But honestly, our program, kind of our fire life safety platform, is built on going beyond compliance. And a customer of ours has to, obviously they can say, I just want the minimum. Just do the least amount you need to do, and we can certainly do that. But we are looking at the beyond compliance, meaning what else can be done to make the systems or the facility safer. And I think that's an important thing to challenge your fire life safety provider. If someone is just doing the minimum, and that's what you want, that's fine. But if you really want to have, maybe the next step, you want to go beyond that and make sure that they're doing more to ensure the safety of your facility, conducting fire training programs or doing some training with your staff. It might be doing monthly inspections instead of just annual inspections. There's, again, having access to all the records and documentation and be able to really be on top of your fire life safety solutions. I think that's really key. I would ask, push your fire life safety company to bring you better access to your records. Again, we've got a whole lot of companies out there that are used to paper, and they'll leave you a copy, and that's that. And when I think about the folks that are probably watching this presentation, you have a lot going on, and the last thing you need to do is try and shuffle through your folders to find an inspection report. Your providers should be able to give you electronic, easy access to your inspections and the history of those. And of course, last thing I would add is, unfortunately, or unfortunately, there are a lot of systems out there that, as they age, they have issues, and they need to be maintained, they need to be repaired. Some folks are a little, I think, have to be reminded often about getting their systems repaired when they find a problem. And I think it's because there's so much going on each day. So making sure that you stay on top of your deficiency, your program, to ensure you're keeping things, in proper order. So, but again, thank you very much. I hope people got something out of today, and we appreciate Amy the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you again, Kevin and Jeff. Thank you to Edwards and Certasite for sponsoring today's webcast. Again, we will be sending out the copies of the slides that were used in today's presentation, and today's conversation will be archived at facilitiesnet.com/webcast. We hope you enjoyed their conversation, and we look forward to seeing you in future FacilitiesNet webcast. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Amy. Bye, Jeff. Thank you.